Hello and welcome to Catholic Unscripted. I'm Katherine Bennett.
I'm Murrock Lambert.
I'm Gawain Ashenden.
We're going to revisit Vigano, however you like to pronounce it, in light of his response to the summoning that was put before him last week. So what's his response been, Murrock?
Well, I thought it was really good. He came out all guns blazing. The interesting thing was that he'd been reported as saying that it was reported. So America magazine, which is the Jesuit magazine, reported that he'd attended the hearing, and he issued a statement, a communication on his website, which said that he hadn't gone and he had absolutely no intention of going. And, attacked the whole basis of the allegations against him.
It's pretty stinky to put out a publicity thing that says he's here, he's attending, he's doing as he's told, when either they knew he wouldn't or they knew he hadn't. I mean, that's a mark of a naughty organisation.
Well, and they're Jesuits, aren't they? Like this. It's interesting because America magazine used to be a very peripheral sort of thing. If you look at who the editors in chief have been, you had Reese, who's complete heretic, and then you had James Martin, who's a complete heretic, and basically it's just been a sort of a fringe, wacky, progressive publication. But since Pope Francis is in, one of the complaints against him is this Jesuitification of the Curia of the Vatican, and you see that the American magazine has risen in prominence, and indeed, Pope Francis has given interviews to American magazine, which obviously has helped to bolster their relevance and importance. So it's a Jesuit thing, man.
And some people are saying that Vigano is saying that he warned about Theodore McCarrick, but they're saying that he didn't. Was it the National Catholic Reporter had? They still have on their website a legacy article in praise of Theodore McCarrick.
Well, we could.
Can you pull that up for us, Mark?
We can try. Hopefully, it is still live. So this is from my blog, right? This is a blog I wrote in 2018. And it goes through a lot of the details. But I managed to find this article from 2014, which was, if you remember, when Pope Francis was elected. And it's in the National Catholic Reporter. And that says McCarrick is one of a number of senior churchmen who were more or less put out to pasture during the 8-year pontificate of Benedict XVI. But now Francis is Pope, and prelates like Walter Casper, another old friend of McCarrick's. So you're getting all, they're making all the connections. And McCarrick himself are back in the mix, and they're busier than ever. McCarrick travels regularly to the Middle East and was in the Holy Land for Francis' visit in May. The bad ones never die, the Pope teased McCarrick again when he saw him. Wasn't that true as well?
He didn't actually say that. He said that. Yeah. Good Lord.
Yeah, he did, yeah. Oh. So this is the article. So you can see it's still live on the National Catholic Reporter here. And it's, got a picture of old Ted McCarrick there before he had his cardinalate stripped from him. And you can see it's dated 21st of June 2014. What I was going to say is that, with the National Catholic Reporter article, the point of it is, as you said, that the Vatican have said that that didn't happen, that Benedict XVI censure on McCarrick wasn't lifted by Pope Francis. But there you've got the National Catholic Reporter actually, giving credence to the fact that that is something that really actually happened in an article from 2014. And then the other response to the Vigano thing was that we've got Deacon Nick Donnelly, who probably is very popular on Twitter, you might have seen his stuff, has been doing this really quite clever set of juxtapositions where he's calling it Spot the Schismatics. And he's just basically done this is really, from a Catholic point of view, I think they're questions worth asking, like, why is Vigano a schismatic when really all he's doing is advocating for Catholic stuff? And when you look through these images of Pope Francis, you really, perhaps not that one so much, that one, you really do, it does make you wonder who is actually the schismatic? I mean, that's what he's saying. Is it Vigano who's trying to uphold? All right, and we were saying, I think, before we came on air, in rather colourful language, or what was it you were saying, Gavin, that it's like language that we can't really follow him sometimes on some of that stuff, or it cuts people out of the discussion.
Intense language.
And of course, there's the most worrying association of all, isn't there, Mark? Can you pull that up?
Well, I think it's probably the most embarrassing public picture the Pope has to deal with in terms of social media, and he's, if it just proves Mark's point.
So, Gavin, it seems that there are a few different views about Vigano. One, that he's nuts and wrong. Another, that he's not nuts and he's right. But there's a third possible option, isn't there? Which is that he might be loopy, but he might also be right.
Well, I like Father V, and I must say, as I'm often veering towards being nuts and right, I think we should have a club of people who associate with each other. See, I thought that his response was really first class. When I read it, I was expecting to be over the top, immoderate, vituperative, conspiratorial, and I read this extremely carefully, reasonably argued response and repudiation of what an organisation out to get somebody had done and was like. And I thought, if I was in his position, wrote a repudiation like that, I'd be very proud of myself. So I think quite clearly it's a bit like Trump derangement syndrome, in the sense that I think sensible people are anxious about the extent to which he's dived into the dark web bit of our life. I'm not very comfortable there. I find it rather alarming. We'll be talking about unsubstantiated rumours in another area of our concerns later on. You have to be, if you want to hold on to your sanity, you've got to be pretty careful about unsubstantiated rumour land. But everything he said about the Catholic Church has been true and right. And if he would not have had to have gone into hiding if the things that he'd said had another side to them that people could put and invite us to choose. The fact is, there is no other side. He's made a number of accusations. They're perfectly cogent, and it's very good that someone has done them. And it's, I think, hugely to the credit of the Catholic Church that it has somebody of his status to do that. I've been reading some articles saying he was slightly out of his depth as ambassador to the United States. Well, we're all slightly out of our depth in most jobs. But I don't think we should allow the accusations of being intense to diminish the focus of what he said, which needs dealing with. Makes it too easy for the institution. So I'm happy for him to be eccentric and intense, but I want what he's accused the Church of to be dealt with, and until it is, then Father V gets my hearing.
Yes, thank you. Well, talking of unsubstantiated rumours, it was the episcopal ordination of David Waller yesterday, Bishop of the Ordinariate. Did either of you attend?
No, I wasn't invited. I was expecting my invitation in the post. After all, I very nearly was taken on by them, and I had lots of close relational conversations with people at the top of the Ordinariate. I thought they would assume that I had a concern and interest, and if the place wasn't completely packed out, they might have been glad of my presence. So I just assumed the place was packed out and wasn't room for anybody else, and they didn't need me, which is why I didn't get an invitation. What was it packed out, Mark?
No, I think they were very disappointed. In fact, there was quite a lot of clergy, Ordinariate clergy, who were moaning that there weren't many particularly bishops there. And I think there were two potential reasons for this. Obviously, I think the Ordinariate are trying to play it that the bishops of England and Wales weren't very supportive, although Cardinal Nichols was in attendance. I don't know. I honestly don't know who else was there. But I think that you have to remember that it's difficult. They obviously had to book in Fernandez, who was the chief ordinate, the guy actually making him a bishop.
The consecrator, yeah.
Consecrating him, thank you. And
by making him a bishop.
We Anglicans borrowed lots of words from you Catholics. I remember a few of them still.
So they had to book him. I'm trying to avoid calling him Tucho. That's what's in the front of my head. So, but I know anyway. Tucho was there. He was the guy who was ordaining him. So, So I would imagine that was difficult, and then it was sort of short notice. And I know, for example, my bishop had an ordination in Loughton of a priest, so he had to go and do that. Well, the net result was that it seemed like it was there wasn't a lot of people there. So.
And there have been a few rumours circulating around, one of which we must apologise for, because I think we spoke about this ordination a few weeks back, and I referred to him as having a role in where? Gavin, I'm going to put the blame on you for this one. Is it the Falkland Islands or somewhere?
Oh, it's my fault. No, it's completely my fault. I'm so sorry. I set a rumour going that he had been Archdeacon of Gibraltar. And the really good news about this is, having made this dreadful mistake and perhaps even smeared his character, the rumour was quashed very quickly. People were able to say this just is factually not true. And I think it's very important that if people make an error of fact in public, in fact, I've just done it with some friends. We had to take a video down because I stupidly misread the grammar of something, and people phoned me up and said, "You're either a bad man, you're an idiot." I said, "Please go for idiot." I misread the thing. My motivation was pure, but my eyesight was bad, or my intelligence had slipped. So we took it down because I'd said something that wasn't true. It's absolutely essential in church life that if something is said which has implications, that it's taken down or dealt with fairly quickly. Whether you're accused of being a former Anglican Archdeacon of Gibraltar or something else. And the difficulty is, if I can bounce this back over the net to my colleagues, that there were other rumours going on and they weren't dealt with. And I think that's really very hard for Bishop, is he a bishop or do we say Monsignor? For Bishop Waller himself, because I think you can't have a situation where rumours fly and they're not dealt with. And so I would have been very glad for them not only to have dealt with my improper rumour, for which I apologise. It was stupidity. The fact is, there's another Waller who was Archdeacon of Gibraltar. It wasn't complete evacuousness of mind. And so I think they should have dealt with these rumours, and they haven't done. And it's not just we, the three of us, who are upset by this. A number of people within the Ordinariate are finding it very difficult that the Church didn't manage to do better and confront things that were being talked about head on.
Yeah, I mean, this is an important role for the Ordinariate, so it will be interesting to see how it develops with Monsignor Waller at the head of it.
Well, in other news, the head of the Vatican Communications has strongly defended continued use of RUPNIK's art in the most horrific way, I have to say, by saying, well, at least he didn't fiddle with minors. Can you really imagine a more offensive response to come from the head of the Vatican Communications? Am I wrong, or did I read that correctly, Mark?
Yeah, no, Paolo Ruffini, who's been prefect for the Dicastery of Communication of the Holy See since 2018, he spoke to the media in a press briefing at the Vatican on the 21st of June this year, 2024. He, in response to questions, the ongoing scandal of RUPNIK's art being used, he basically said, we're not talking about the abuse of minors. And that was his excuse for why they're continuing to use it, which is absolutely atrocious as far as I can see.
And if, Gavin, people watching aren't familiar with the name RUPNIK or what he has been accused of, might you remind our viewers?
Yeah, that's really quite hard.
Carefully.
I mean, well, allegedly. It's not alleged, it is accepted. Essentially, he's sexually abused, controlled, damaged a large number of nuns, sisters in an order. And what's really painful about this is that some of them came out, they came out and they said, this shouldn't be going on. We'd like you please to deal with it. and it wasn't dealt with. It was covered up. And only through their courage and their willingness to be profoundly embarrassed by the level of sexual perversity, which included the greatest disrespect to our Lord in the abuse of sacred vessels for Mass. And so I think what I find so difficult about this is that in our junior sister publication, the Catholic Herald, I've recently done a podcast with a very impressive man called Father Hans Zollner. He's a Jesuit. And he was in charge of a huge authority on safeguarding. He's resigned from one of the committees he's been on because of the way in which the safeguarding mechanisms in the church haven't worked. But what was interesting was talking, I got him on video so I could see his face, but talking with him about the journey he's been on for accompanying children and minors and other people who've been abused. It's taken the most immense toll on him and his face. And you could see that, but at the end, the climax for me of our conversation was, Father, why do they continue to hide it? Why, how is it remotely possible that the people that we know who have responsibility for the church cover it up? And he looked at me in absolute bleak despair and said, I don't know. I don't know, and I can't cope with it. And I think the problem is that here we have a most disastrous story. I mean, it's so disastrous that even though Catherine trusts me to recount the details without too much red-faced embarrassment, they really are horrible. I mean, they're just awful. And all it requires is for the church to hold him accountable, to say sorry, to offer some kind of pastoral affirmation to the women who are the church's responsibility. And the worst of the matter is dealt with. There are a whole lot of other things that come, but they won't even do that. And the difficulty here is his art, which is soulless and grotesque and deeply unpleasant. And it's up for other people to express their own aesthetic appreciation or not. His art is being kept as a public memento of what? It effectively becomes a public memento of abuse and the refusal of the church to acknowledge it and repent. It's a matter of really very serious, profound shame. There are few moral issues where you can say this is egregious at the very far end of the scale. But I think this is one of them. And like Father Hans Zollner, I don't understand. How can they do this?
It's such an interesting case because there's someone involved in it, isn't there? There's someone involved in the dicastery who's sort of protecting him and continuing to use his images. And obviously there's a link to the Pope because he was excommunicated for hearing confessions of someone that he'd abused in the confessional and then giving them absolution for their sins. And basically he was excommunicated for that because it's a canonical offence, and then that was reversed. And the only people who could have reversed it were the guy who did it, which was the guy who was the head of the DDF. So it seems very unlikely that he'd have done it and then reversed it. And the only other person would be the Pope. So it seems like the Pope is very involved in this. And he also had him, while this was all going on, to preach for the Easter thing at the Vatican or something. So he's continued to sort of involve him at the highest level of what's going on in Rome. Like there's an article in Catholic World Report where it says that the Vatican has continued to use digital reproductions of pieces even after he began to face allegations. I mean, even now they're saying that they're going to continue to use it. And in this press conference on the 21st of June, Ruffini told the journalists that they didn't put any new photos up. We just left what images there were there. And the article says that the head of the Vatican Comms Dicastery Theological Pastoral Department, Natasha Govakar, was in the Vatican delegation to the week-long conference. Govakar's department is directly responsible for the digital liturgical calendar that frequently features. So this is the lady that I was saying is heavily involved in it. It frequently features RUPNIK's images. A close associate of RUPNIK, a member of the Centro Aletto Art Institute, and that's the art institute that RUPNIK founded in Rome. and she's also Slovenian, like RUPNIK. So she didn't headline official sessions or answer any questions. But the question that, Ruffini was answering a question, and he said, do you think if I put away photo of an art from our website, I'll be more close to the victims? This is in answer to this guy, Guzik, who had posed questions to him regarding the message his dicastery is sending to victims of abuse and cover-up, which is a valid question, isn't it, And he said, he seems quite aggressive, Ruffini, in his response, because he says, do you think so? I think you're wrong. I think you're very wrong. So he noted that the Jesuits haven't removed RUPNIK art that adorns the chapel in their General Curia building, and he called their decision inspiring. I mean, they really seem wrong. Even Austin Ivory, who is, he defends the Pope on everything, has said that this is crazy on Twitter. The Vatican should not be using the RUPNIK images in websites, etc., especially given that RUPNIK is being investigated by the Vatican. So, I mean, this continues to roll on, and we were saying last time we met, I think, about the fact that the press are finally, the mainstream media seem finally interested in the fact that, I mean, we've known for ages that the Vatican is rife with phone tapping. And all of a sudden, the mainstream media seem to be picking up on that. But this is, I think, the RUPNIK thing is a massive, massive scandal. And it's just one of a number of people, men, that Pope Francis is involved in. And as we've speculated, it seems to be because he has got this modus operandi of engaging broken men, promoting them to high office because they wouldn't get there any other way unless he had some hold over them, so that they then, sort of effectively owe everything that they've got to him and his patronage. Which, it's like that South American dictatorship sort of way of doing things, isn't it?
Yes, well, it rumbles on still. And to finish today, Gavin, we've linked here an article that you've written for the Catholic Herald, which is really brilliant. Back in the UK, Rishi Sunak is not opposed, he has said, to assisted suicide. And Gavin, you've written about this, and I quote from your article that this is a very powerful line. At the very last minute of his premiership, Rishi Sunak has spotted an opportunity to reduce the prospect of his political death by facilitating the death of others. It's pretty poor, isn't it? And just the nail in the coffin for the Conservative Party, who have not, as I've said, conserved anything of value and are now going after those who want to see euthanasia legalised.
The RUPNIK said, not RUPNIK, sorry, Rishi Sunak said that if with the proper safeguards, he could see his way to promoting euthanasia. And this is so stupid, so degraded. I'm sorry to sound like Mary Whitehouse today, but this really scrapes the bottom of the barrel. The latest outrageous deaths in Canada involve a man who sought state execution on the grounds that he was deaf, and they let him be killed, euthanized. There's another woman who wrote in a care home. She said, I'm just in a wheelchair now, and I need a little ramp for my wheelchair to get in and out. And they said, why don't you kill yourself instead? In more polite bureaucratic language, but pursue MAIDs, medically assisted suicide. So this idea that there are the right safeguards, of course, is complete nonsense and irresponsible. We know perfectly well that human beings will abuse certain principles, and the sanctity of life is one thing that can't be abused, and you don't let polishes anywhere near. So I have no sympathy for Rishi Sunak and his kind, but this was a really mean, sneaky, immoral way of trying to prolong his political life at the expense of the weakest. And I'm glad to have been able to try and call it out.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very important issue. There's so many cases like that. There's a man in Canada, again, where they have this MAID, they call it medical assistance in dying, where he was disabled in some way. He was suffering some kind of chronic disability, and he was also struggling to pay his rent. And he was it was suggested to him that he might want to avail himself of medical assistance in dying, and he booked his appointment. He booked an appointment. He had an appointment, let's say, 2 months hence, and he was coming up to that appointment, and he'd spoken about how he felt he didn't have any choice, and he did some kind of crowdfunding, or someone, I can't remember the story, some donor came up and said, I'll cover your rent, and so he cancelled his appointment, and he's now here living to tell the tale. But he's not the only one. There have been people who have found that it's the cheaper option to be euthanized. There are people who are so depressed and can't see a way out that they're being euthanized. It undermines suicide prevention efforts. It, of course, once you strip away that absolute of the sanctity of human life, and you say, we're going to say only under this condition, well, that's too late. There are no safeguards possible then, because you've said, if we're going to allow for this, there'll always be those who then say, well, if you're going to make an allowance for this, why not this? Why not me? I'm depressed. Why not me? I don't have I don't have a probable chance of dying in the next 6 months, but I don't want to live in chronic pain for 10 years, so why not me? And then it's hard to make a case against it. Well, why not you? If we've said it's okay for somebody who doesn't want to be in pain for 6 months, how can we say it's not okay for someone who doesn't want to be in pain for 10 months or 2 years or 10 years? And so it's the camel's nose under the tent, isn't it? It's a thin end of the wedge. And so it has to be an absolute. This idea that it can somehow be safeguarded is demonstrably impossible. It's demonstrably wrong. We've seen it in countries where they've legalised euthanasia. So I'm very glad you wrote about it, and a few others have as well. It's as we come up to the general election, it's something we should all Catholics should be really mindful of, and use their vote in a way that won't bring about these changes in law. Because as you said once, Mark, I think this is brilliant. The law is pedagogical. There are pedagogical, that's another word like Vigano. Where do I put the emphasis there?
What is your preferred pronunciation?
If you asked people, if you did a survey up and down the country, you might find that most people would like to see a return of the death penalty. Why don't the government bring back the death penalty? Well, there's a question. Why don't they? Any answers? Right, because they've decided it's wrong, so they're not. And yet they say, but this is open. This is open. This is a conscience vote, a free vote. Yeah. So there we go. Well,
so I step in some good news at the end.
Please do. So, Gavin, maybe you've got a bit of good news to finish with today.
Well, the danger is with having the kind of conversations we've had that we're exposing some of the darker side of the church. But the other day I was invited to go to Tunbridge Wells to talk at an exhibition of the Blessed Carlo Cuto, and they had his Eucharistic miracles on the back of this very large church, and I was absolutely astonished that this boy had taken the trouble to get this together. It's so impressive. I mean, I've got books on it, and as you know, it's one of the things that brought me into the church. But it was hugely impressive, and about 150 people turned up to hear me talk about Eucharistic miracles. And I just want to say how wonderful Catholicism is. I've been reading this book and come across two people who are now my currently most inspiring Catholics. The book is called The History of the Impossibles, They Flew, by Carlos Eire, E-I-R-E. But the life of St. Joseph Cupertino, who it's just so exciting. I won't talk about it now because it takes too long. But Maria Agreda, too, was a Carmelite nun who was born in 1605. And she bilocated to New Mexico. And I know this sounds completely weird. In fact, I tried that on my son. And he said, come on, Dad, this is too much. I can't cope with this. But they had tribes of Indians coming into the mission station saying, this nun in blue has come to us to catechize us and we want to be baptized. Hundreds and hundreds of Mexican natives. And it turned out all the evidence was it was her not having stirred from the monastery where she'd been the whole of her life. And the Inquisition looked into her about 6 times. And 3 times they decided it was improper, and 4 times they decided it was authentic. I just want to say that the Catholic Church is the most wonderful place, full of the most wonderful people. The level of supernatural holiness is staggeringly inspiring. And I think we need to balance the decay, the degradation and the sin with some of the vision and the sheer joy and delight. I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying being a Catholic. And you might want to read They Flew by Carlos Ayer.
Carlos, and we've got a wonderful picture here of you, Gavin, mid-flow. And people say you're right-wing, Gavin. People say you're too right-wing.
Oh, no. I shall sit down in future. I should have done the whole broadcast like this, really. So sorry. I don't know how that happened.
Well, it's always lovely to finish with you saying how wonderful it is to be a Catholic, because of course it is.
Can I just say that that's not what it looks like? I think I was. I don't know what I was saying at the time, but there we are. Gosh, how embarrassing.
There we are. Right. Well, thank you for watching. If you have not yet picked up a membership, please visit our website, catholicunscripted.com. There's bronze, silver and gold. It's silver and gold memberships that will open up the daily news broadcasts from myself and Gavin Ashenden, and will also open up exclusive member blogs that Mark Lambert writes. So please do have a look, support us in any way you can, make a one-off donation, or as I said, grab a membership. Anything that you can do will really help us to continue to maintain this space, and we're very grateful for it. Thank you. Right.
Merrick Leopard.
I'm Gawain Ashenden, and my preferred pronunciation is Gavin Ashenden.
Thank you for watching.